This is OutQ in the morning on Sirius OutQ 109.
Was there ever a point where you were worried? Did your family ever see this?
No, it wasn't until I wrote the memoir that I actually had to tell my mom about it.
And what was the reaction?
Oh, a lot of tears and anger, and I had to dump a lot of stuff on her at one time, and my father had just passed away. It was not a happy time. I had just been fired from my job in Atlanta because I told them about the book. So I was dealing with all of that.
What kind of work were you doing?
I'm an attorney.
Okay. And so, talking to Rich Merritt here at OutQ in the morning, where our number is 866-305-6887. And so, obviously, you're not doing films anymore.
No. Well, obviously.
For folks who haven't had a chance to pick up Code of Conduct, what made you stop?
I met a guy and fell in love, and he was kind of against it.
Kind of against it?
Yeah.
Kind of?
That's like being a little pregnant. So he just didn't want you to do it.
Right.
And so why, so you managed to go undetected.
That's correct.
As a Marine. So why did you tell?
It was after, well, I did the New York Times Magazine article.
Yeah.
I'd already submitted my resignation, and a reporter through channels contacted me, and I said, well, since I'm getting out anyway, I'll do this story, and I introduced her to a bunch of my friends. And I was on the cover of the New York Times Magazine,
Right.
anonymously though. And then after I got out of the Marines, a writer for The Advocate approached me about doing a story revealing my identity. So I said, okay. And after that story came out, a reader called and said, this guy was in porn videos. And to The Advocate's credit, they did contact me for a comment, but...
Well, they have to. Legally, they have to. They can't just say it.
And I said, no comment, which I was actually talking to lawyers, and they said, don't say anything. And of course, as you know, when you tell a journalist no comment, it's...
It's a comment.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes. So what did that do to your relationship? Because if your partner is not keen on you being a porn star, he's probably going to be equally unhappy about you talking about it.
Well, he was very supportive. That's probably what got me through that time. But...
Are you still together?
No, I'm with a different partner now, 2 years.
And so was it all of the flurry that followed your coming out and your reveal of your past that ended that relationship?
I think so. I think it started the process of doing that. At the time I didn't put it together, but when I was doing the memoir, I realized, it was only a few months after that I actually started experimenting with ecstasy and other drugs and going to the circuit parties. And I'm not the type of person that can do that in moderation. And I've quickly found, after a couple of years, I found that out. And I attempted suicide, and my partner found me and rescued me, and I was in a mental hospital for 3 days in California. It's a mandatory 72-hour thing. And during that period is when I thought, how did I get here? I was a highly decorated Marine officer and a graduate of USC Law School. And
so how did you get there?
Like I said, just years of not dealing with things in healthy ways, of not looking at my problems directly and admitting that this is what I've got to deal with, especially the self-esteem stuff.
So we're talking with Rich Merritt here at OutQ in the morning about his book, Code of Conduct. And what would you say to someone who might be where you were before your first move toward acting out? What would you say to that person to stop them from making some of the mistakes you made?
I would say really take a long look at the long-term consequences. There's nothing wrong with porn, obviously. I don't think there is.
Not.
But you've got to understand, where you go in life is going to be based on other people's perceptions of you,
So
whether you like it or not.
Do you think that doing porn was your ultimate downfall?
It was the beginning of a process, yeah, I would say, because once I did that, once you put yourself out there on video, there's no going back.
Right.
And
But
you're
it
out
doesn't have to, because I did a video. It didn't. My
Yeah,
life
I've
has been
heard
fine.
that.
So yeah, and I'm not. I'm.
And my life is fine now.
I don't think my video looks particularly good, but I'm not. So I don't say go look at it. but I'm also not ashamed of it.
Right.
When I was hired here, I told them,
Yeah.
I used to be a model under this name, and I'm not going to do it anymore as part of my agreement with you. But I did it.
Well,
Right.
But the difference I think between what you're saying and what has happened to you was that when you entered into that whole phase of doing the modeling and all that other stuff, that was a way of you reclaiming who you were.
Well, I was already out for a very long time.
And you were already
before I
out
did it.
and living,
I was
but
out
you were.
I was out for about 15 years before I did it.
Right.
So do you feel that by the video, you did the video before you came out, that
Right.
that was part of
Right.
what made it toxic for you?
And I was putting myself at risk. I mean, people in the military who do something like this can go to prison,
Yeah.
and that was, and I knew that.
So I mean, the reason I go back to the idea of you acting out in anger against yourself, because it sounds like it. I mean, forgive me for playing dime store or shrink, but it seems like it's because I think about the things I've done that have been self-destructive in my life, and they're usually because I'm mad at myself.
Right.
Right.
So do you feel like you've passed that hurdle?
Yes, I do. I think. I've taken every measure I could to deal with it. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, people would talk about when I was a kid, Jesus, look at what Jesus did for you, and all I
Right.
felt was guilt that he had to die on the cross.
Right.
When you carry, when you're a 5-year-old kid carrying guilt like that, that's where the self-destructiveness comes from.
And so, what would you say? We only have a couple minutes left. What would you say was the first step you took for someone who might be listening right now? So people at various stages of their coming out process and their acceptance, listening, and for someone who might be sliding down, what was the first proactive step you took?
I started seeing a therapist, and if you're, there's a stigma in this country about that. And,
Yeah, there is.
Most people I know could use the help or could benefit from a good therapist. So I would say don't have any shame about that.